Are we ready with the stream and everything? Yeah, we're ready up here with Josef for the last talk of the day before lightning talks. I can say sort of loosely that there's a lot of freelancers, self-employed, consultants, however you may choose to identify in this audience. So probably a lot of people, target group of this talk, and really exciting to have you on stage. Big round of applause for Josef.
Okay. Yes. We want to have a better world, and we're going to start creating the better world by creating a better workplace. Because that's what we have the power to at the beginning. And the only thing you're missing out on is the pretty pictures. Yeah. And if we want to have a better workplace, it might help to know what would make our workplace, what change in our workplace would make us happier. So anyone have ideas? Yes. More money, yes. That's a good one. Any other ideas? Yes? Less working hours. You can just shout them out. Nicer people, okay. What else? Less scrum, yes. Some people might want more scrum, some people might want less scrum. Work from home, yes, another idea? Less meetings, yes. Yes, I want to say some more ambitious ideas. Maybe you want less racism or less sexism, or you want to write some higher quality software even if your bosses think it's not necessary, or you want to care about your users' privacy, or maybe you want to use free software at work, or maybe you want to publish free software, or maybe you want to attend Django Day and Bornhack on work time. Maybe you want to treat the climate emergency as an emergency, and maybe you want to end wage slavery. Yes. But it starts with the simple things, like we said, like fewer meetings, change the, if you don't like Scrum, no Scrum, work remote, yeah. So I'm going to tell you a few ways you might try to achieve these things, and I'm going to tell you the one that I like, and I'm mostly going to tell you, first I'm going to tell you the normal summary of the normal things people tell you to do, and then I'll tell you what it might look like in the context of Django work. So yeah, trade unions. A lot of people know about those. If you're alone and you don't have a union and you don't talk to your colleagues and you think we should be able to work remote, and you could ask nicely to your boss and your boss can say no. So now what do? Okay, maybe you could change jobs, but you change jobs to another job that's just as bad. So that doesn't work either. So that's why one approach would be with a trade union, and maybe I don't know, a trade union on its own, if you're just one person connected to a trade union, it's not going to be so helpful for work remote. But it might be helpful with things like helping you negotiate salary, helping you understand your contract. If your employer is breaking the law, maybe they can represent you. They can also get you in touch with other union colleagues. And if it's a trade union, it'll be easiest for them to get you in touch with people in your trade. So that might be if you're in the same union. So if you're maybe IDA or POSA in Denmark, they could get you in touch with others, but they can also connect you with people in other trade unions. And then you connect with people, and then you can also do other things. You can have actions that aren't just employer, you need to follow the law. You could strike, and you could do this sort of stuff. But what if sometimes trade union doesn't work, and it's actually the way you organize is the same regardless of whether you have a trade union, but well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, let's say you want to join a trade union, but you can't join a trade union, or you can join a trade union, but you're the only software developer at your company. So it helps, but it's kind of indirect. Or maybe your client is in a different country, and maybe you switch clients every year, so it's kind of too complicated to join trade unions. Or maybe you're ineligible to join a trade union because you own your company, because you're a freelancer, even though you really are a worker, but technically you're not. So so then let's think about what a union is. A union is just a bunch of people who are supporting each other, and so you are the union. So there's another approach to organizing, which is, and now I have a pretty picture that I can't show you, industrial organizing. Instead of organizing the trade first, we organize the people who work together. So we start with maybe your group at a company, and then the whole company, or maybe the whole office, and then the whole company, and then the whole industry, and then all the industries, and then then we can live in peace and harmony with the earth. But here it's not organizing just the software developers at your company. It's just organizing everyone. That way gives us more power. We'll see. I am going to really quickly summarize how to do it. If you want to learn more, there are courses you can take if you join the Industrial Workers of the World. Yeah, so the two steps. First, you build a committee, which is a group of people that says, like, this is what we want to change and this is how we're going to do it. So start talking with your colleagues one-on-one, however you can do that, and start finding out what people care about and what people are annoyed about the work and what people would like to have changed. My experience in software, it's usually like people want to write better software. They're not originally thinking about, like, I want more vacation or yeah, but that's good. And then once you have a few people who you think are the right people, start meeting as a group and bring more people into the group. And now you have the group of people. Now you can make the change. So you probably want to start with something easy and an action that's really simple. But then if you don't get what you want, then you have to be able to increase the pressure. And when yeah, so now I'm going to give just a few examples of what it might look like if you're a Django developer working in whatever company and you're trying to start with trying to build a committee. So one thing you could do is say, hey, you want to go out, fellow worker, would you like to go out for coffee next week? And then you coffee outside work, so there's no spying from your boss. Then you can talk about what's going on at work. But the problem with this is then you have to go out for coffee, and it takes time, and I don't want to use extra time from outside my work. But that is an option that's, like, always there. Actually, no, that's an option there if you work in the same place. But if you work remote, that isn't there. Another place would be at work, but as I said, it could be you might not feel comfortable talking there. Another idea is maybe you have a private work meeting because you're actually working on something together, like migrating the legacy system or whatever, and you have two people in the meeting, and you just at the end of the meeting you say, okay, how's it going with work, and is anything annoying you, and what should we change here, and yeah. Or another thing you can do, maybe you have colleagues you don't work with really that you would like to talk to because they're working on a different project. So you can just say, well, let's say you're working remote. You can say, well, I never get to meet any of you, so I want to have 15 minutes, have a coffee with you over the proprietary video service that we use. And then when you're having the coffee with the person, you can have a coffee, and then you can also ask, like, what things need to change here. And yeah, so now this is some ideas to get you thinking about how you might do it. You figure out what will make sense in your company, and there's also more strategy to, like, who you're going to talk to first, and yeah, where to meet. But that's the basic idea. Now some ideas of some actions once you have your committee. Well, you've probably heard of a petition. That's good because it's a good thing about a petition is it's really easy. A bad thing about a petition is it's really easy to ignore it. So we want some other options. You've probably also heard of a strike. Strike is quite expensive and it's hard to ignore. But it'd be nice to have some things in between because yeah, it's hard to go immediately from petition to a strike. So one thing to keep in mind when you're planning an action is that the only reason the company really cares about you is that you are providing labor that makes money for the company. So one of the few things you can do, like you maybe you have some legal support from laws of the government, but the main thing you have is the ability to withhold your labor, and you can also implicitly threaten to withhold your labor, not actually withhold your labor. So that's the reason why a petition works. It's not you're not withholding your labor, but if the employer thinks they might withhold their labor, well then maybe I should do what they say. So one technique is called the march on the boss, which is like the petition, but instead of saying here's a letter, please do what we say, we walk into your office and we read out our letter and say you need to do this. And it's a lot more scary when the whole office is in your office saying do this. Yeah, and let's go with, so for example, let's say we think we need to fix those security vulnerabilities in our application and the boss doesn't care. Well, then we walk into the office and maybe the boss will say, okay, fine, I'll let you do it. But another approach is not a march on the boss. Another approach would be we just don't tell the boss, we just do it anyway. And so an example of this would be, I think a really nice example of this is automated tests. A lot of times people say, you know, we don't have time for automated tests, but all the developers want to write automated tests. So you can just write the automated tests and hide them and not tell your boss that you're writing automated tests. You can do this as a single person, but it's even cooler if you do it as a group, because it saves you more time and stuff, but also because you start to realize that you have power. Maybe you are a Django developer, but maybe there's some other people in the company that work in tech support, and they have some bullshit quotas or something, and they have to answer calls within a certain period, and they don't like that. And you could tell your bosses, stop that, but you could also like make bullshit tech support requests in order to game the statistics to help them. So this is all some techniques. Another technique, we talked about strikes. Strikes are very expensive, and if you're just doing this as like your DIY union in a company, you don't have a strike fund. So if you're going to do a strike, you have to do it cheaply. So for example, we talked about well, suppose you have your company wants to migrate from PHP to Django, you know, whatever, to modernize, but the real reason is so that they can fire the expensive old programmers and replace them with young Django developers who will work overtime for no money. So you could tell them that this is not okay, this is age discrimination. You could tell them it's a bad idea because we actually need these people because they help us a lot understand the legacy system. What you could also do is just, maybe you could say it once that it's not a good idea, and then when they start firing people, well, you just reduce your productivity and you start creating bugs, and they don't care what you feel or anything, but they'll see, oh, okay, the performance is going down, so maybe we should not fire all these people. Maybe you're this is again on the line of a cheap strike. Maybe you work at a consultancy, and like you make CMSs for different clients, and your colleagues think that the climate emergency is an emergency and we should treat it as an emergency, so we don't want to work for petroleum industry companies. So if you give us a project with a petroleum industry company, we're going to strike, but we're going to do a cheap strike that doesn't cost us any money. What we'll do is if you make us work on a petroleum industry project, we're going to comply with all of our company policies. And we're going to read all the terms of service of all these proprietary softwares that we use, and all the licenses. And also, we're only going to work during work hours. And then the productivity will go way down. But you're still working, you know, it's not a strike, what can they say? And it really doesn't matter what your immediate workplace improvement thing is, because another thing you're learning is how to organize yourselves. You're also learning that you have power. You're also building a shell of the new society that will replace the existing structure. So one thing I struggled with for a while was like a lot of the work that's available to a person with computer skills is like really bad and should be criminal. So like, for example, if your industry is war, if you work for like one of the big tech companies and they're selling weapons to Israel, you're making money personally off of war. But I still want you to have better working conditions. Because then once all the war industry companies have organized, then all the workers can decide, actually, we don't want to fight other workers in other countries. We don't want to make these weapons anymore. And they're doing that already. There's an initiative, No Tech for Apartheid, where people in big tech companies are protesting that. Maybe you work for one of those anti-social media companies that call themselves social media companies, but they're really antisocial, and your job is to get people addicted to social media. I still want you to work to have better working conditions, because then once you're all organized, you'll realize that the real fight is not between you and the people you're trying to addict, but it's between you and the workers. And all these anti-social media companies, the whole industry, can say we refuse to provide anti-social media. And then once all the industries are organized, well, then we'll live in love and laughter, and we'll live in harmony with the earth. And now it's time for the live demo. And I think I have some people preparing the live demo for me. Yes, great. I thought there needed to be a live demo because, there needed to be a live demo, and it needs to be something that can go wrong, and I'm really bad at guitar. I just started learning a couple weeks ago, so we're going to have the live demo. Now, problem, because I don't have the slides, you don't have the lyrics. So you can look up the song maybe on the internet. It's called The Commonwealth of Toil. And maybe you can find the lyrics. And if you can't figure out the melody, just make one up. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. So, yes. In the gloom of mighty cities, mid the roar of whirling wheels, we are toiling on like chattel slaves of old. And our masters hope to keep us ever thus beneath their heels, and to coin our very lifeblood into gold. But we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will seem when we each can live our lives secure and free. When the earth is owned by labor and there's joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be. They would keep us cowed and beaten, cringing meekly at their feet. They would stand between each worker and their bread. Shall we yield our lives up to them for the bitter crust we eat? Shall we only hope for heaven when we're dead? But we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will seem when we each can live our lives secure and free. When the earth is owned by labor and there's joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be. Oh, where was I? They have laid our lives out for us to the utter end of time. Shall we stagger on beneath their heavy load? Shall we let them live forever in their gilded halls of crime, with our children doomed to toil beneath their goad? But we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will seem when we each can live our lives secure and free. When the earth is owned by labor and there's joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be. When our cause is all triumphant and we claim our Mother Earth, and the nightmare of the present fades away, we shall live with love and laughter, we who now are little worth, and will not regret the price we had to pay. But we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will seem when we each can live our lives secure and free. When the earth is owned by labor and there's joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be. Thank you. And that's all.
Thank you so much. Do you take questions?
Yes.
Yes. Do we have questions? Ah, someone's forming committees already.
Hello. Thank you for an awesome talk and song. Is there a reason you didn't include discussing wages with your fellow laborers? Because I think that is super important.
Yes, I didn't include it because it's a normal thing, and this is Django Day, so I wanted to talk about the things that be specific. But yes, discuss wages with your colleagues. Yes, yeah. It's also really fun. Like I was working at a company. They were trying to hire me, and give me what I thought was low pay, but what other people would think was high pay, and I was just They caught me right before I said it, but I was in the middle of the conversation saying like, "What? That sounds really low. Why would anyone work for much money with all these other people around to make them think, oh, you're not getting paid enough. You need to ask for more money. You know, it's yeah, yeah. But also privately is a good way to do it. We have a
One more. Sorry.
So
oh yeah.
so you talk about like different ways of sort of like well, what to do when the negotiations sort of like fail, if the sort of like there's a problem with the sort of like a workplace that doesn't like get fixed, and you sort of like thought ways of pressuring the employer. How do you feel about the tactics that employers use? Like, do you what do you feel about those tactics that the sort of like the company could use to sort of like negotiate back?
Yes.
Do you sort of like
Union busting you're talking about.
well that, or sort of like just
Where
let's
are
say
you?
that if
I
you go
can't
if you go to strike, sort of like then the company would
okay.
should they sort of like be able to withhold work, so say that okay, you don't have to come next week, sort of like not sort of like putting. Do you think that there should be a like, what do you feel if there would be a sort of like a balance between that the same sort of like tactics would be used? So sort of your opinions.
Okay. Is it perhaps that you have an example in mind?
Well, let's say
If
for
not, it's fine.
like strikes. That sort of like you'll go to strikes. That basically means that you withhold the work from the company. But the company could also say then that, hey, we'll withhold the work from you. You
Yes.
cannot come to work, and we'll not pay you.
Yes.
Sort of like
This is a risk. Yes, it is a risk that the company will fire you. So this is something you have to keep in mind, and that's maybe why you start with something smaller. That's maybe why you wait until you have a small group. That's maybe why you don't tell you don't tell your bosses that you're negotiating them, and that's why you instead just write the tests and don't tell them that you wrote the tests, or you know. I guess one of the advantages of organizing through an official union is like it's easier to say like we unionized and you fired us for unionizing and that's illegal. So if you do it through the legal way, you get the legal protection, and if you do it you can join the Industrial Workers of the World and you'll be part of a union. But if you don't do that, you just do these tactics, then well, it's still probably illegal to fire you for organizing, even if you aren't officially part of a union, but you do have less protection that way. Does that answer your question? I guess not.
Not totally. Maybe sort of like because I might sort of like feel differently about these things, and that's sort of like I was more about like, have you thought about the sort of like of the sort of like point of view of the employer? Am I using the terms right? Is the employer the one that pays the salary or employer?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're using the term right.
Yeah. So sort of like, have you thought about from their point of view, like if they are using the tactics? And maybe that's sort of like the reason is that I'm a small business owner and I'm part of many small businesses. They are that kind of businesses that sort of like where sort of like I have to call if there's if people have a bad day and they don't want to come to work, I'll have to call them to get them to work because sort of like I need the work done so that sort of like the customers don't come there. But how do you sort of like feel, because you have pointed out really good cases how to use the pressure if the sort of like, I'll say the sort of like normal way of discussing breaks down. But how do you feel about the sort of like balance between things, or like what is your opinions on the when companies use that kind of like pressure tactics? And I'm not speaking about union busting, but I'm speaking about the sort of like they'll use pressure tactics back to the sort of like people.
Yes. So I talked about workers and did I say employers? Well, but yeah, workers and employers, two classes, as if they're so clear. So if you like have $1 billion and then you're probably employing class. Or if you are like the commander of a military, you're employing class. And if you work as a Django developer and you don't have anyone reporting to you, you're definitely a worker. But what if you have like one person reporting to you, or what if you have a small business? Then a union will say you're not a worker, but you're actually much closer to the workers than to the real employing class. So it's kind of like it's a tough position to be in, but I would I would see yourself as closer to the working class, but you can only do this if you support your fellow workers. Now, what's the other thought I had? Then the other thing is trade unions, often the goal of a trade union is stated as to provide an efficient work market and to have work continue being productive. So that's one goal you could have for organizing. Another goal you could have is to overthrow wage slavery and live in peace and harmony with the earth. So the normal trade union view is closer to we need to keep the work going well, so that's why we need to have good working conditions so that our workers won't strike. Is that? Yeah.
It was a very good question, but the answer has to be very long also. We have time for another question. Yeah, there was one in the front. Oh, there's one in the front and one in the back. And then I think we have to close.
So you mentioned that one approach to resist kind of would be to outright write bugs in the code, in the software. Isn't that a step too far? Because then you would be constraining your options. You're a professional and your work is not just of poor quality, but intentionally causing damage, kind of. If our work wasn't Django developers, but instead we were running a nuclear plant, then we would destroy the world. When does it become a step too far?
Yes, this is something you'd have to consider each case. So if it is a health risk, maybe it's not the sort of place you want to create bugs. Maybe you want to create the bugs somewhere else. You don't necessarily have to create bugs. You could just be slow at developing, or you could open tickets for bugs that aren't really bugs. But I also want to point out, I think a lot of people have trouble with this, that they take pride in their work. So I read a really nice report on from the CIA, I think, whatever. suppose you're like imagine you're like a Django developer, and you're in Russia, and you're being made to make systems for controlling drones or something that are being shot to Ukraine. One of the best things you could do for the world is to make broken systems so that the drones just like don't take off or something. So like instinctively you say, I want to write good software, but if I write good software, I'm contributing to death. And if I write bad software, I'm preventing death.
Can't you avoid working for that employer in the first place?
Well, sometimes, but even if you find yourself working there, you can. If you find yourself if you were stupid enough to hire me after hearing this talk, to write, like, if someone were to give me a job, like writing drone software for Russia, well, I'd be worried about sanctions. But like, if I would take the job and I would write broken drone software and make the drones crash and not kill anyone.
Yeah. There was a question up here in the front, but then I think we need to
Yeah.
be mindful with the time.
Who's in the front? The front?
It's actually more of a comment, but yes. But no, I think especially in Denmark, when we are in a country where we have comparatively good working conditions, or if we are in a company that has good working conditions, it's really good to look at the cheap outsourcing that the company is probably doing, and look at the working conditions of the people who have much less of a voice and much less of a possibility, and say, okay, I'm not going to work together with people in India who are not on eye height, who don't have the same good working conditions that we have here.
Yes. You can do even more than that. Thank you for this comment, even though it wasn't a question, because I really want to talk about this. You can say, I'm not going to work with them, or you can say, I am going to work with them, and I'm going to help them organize. I complain about trade unions, but trade unions do work relatively well in Denmark. POSA just donated money to a strike, gave money to a strike for Georgian IT workers. I think that's great.
Final comment. As someone who was fired about a month ago for standing up for our right to work from home, I can say that it was absolutely fucking worth it.
All right. So these were some really great ideas. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to hopefully also get hired, and and thank you for also daring the musical venture. It was great. I think we should give one round of applause for the talk and one for the music.
For the music.